Vi veldig glad i Israel, og da har vi lyst til å ha litt fokus på den. Så vi kjempeglad nå for at, han kunne møte opp her. Eytan Halon kommer via link direkte inn. Han på ambassaden i Oslo. Det ikke ambassadør der, men dette da lederen for ambassaden, viseambassadør, eller hva vi kan kalle det. Skal jeg få opp en liten slide her, som går litt på info om Israel? I 1948 fikk de landet sitt, samtidig som Norge fikk Svalbard. Norge okkuperer jo ikke Svalbard, men hvorfor snakker de da om at Israel okkuperer sitt eget land? Altså, det jo helt opplagt, historisk korrekt, at Israel med alle sine grenser, inklusiv den beten som heter Gaza, som du ser uti der, som det har vært meget mye i media om, og inklusiv det man kaller for Vestbredden, det jo Israels land. Og det å stille et spørsmål ved, hvorfor i all verden det områder i Israel der det står «Not for Jews»? Det jo helt sprøtt, det jo snudd på hodet. Golan tilhører Israel. Grensene de fikk den gangen i 1948, det tilhører de. Bare ta disse punktene videre her, det ble fint det. Ja, de ble angrepet 3 dager, eller fra 3 kanter dagen etter de etablerte landet, og de vant. Men da var det jo disse områdene da, som egypterne fra Jordan og fra Syria, sant? Så angrep de. Størrelsen på landet også synes jeg veldig fascinerende. Norge altså 18,5 ganger større. Jeg har alltid tenkt at Norge jo et for så vidt lite land, men når du sammenligner med Israel så det veldig lite. De passerte 10 millioner i 2025, hvorav 7,7 millioner jøder. De klarer å holde disse arabiske statene i sjakk. De 650 millioner arabere. Og til tider så har de jo, nå har de jo blitt angrepet egentlig fra utallige hold. Det kjenner vi jo til. Men fra starten av så har de blitt angrepet hele veien, og det jo et mirakel at de har klart å overleve. De så innbitt, disse her som fienden deres, at Israel helt irrelevant. Vi vil ikke ha Israel på kartet, vi skal ikke ha en jødisk stat her. Her skal alt være muslimsk. Og vi har mange å offre. Jeg har hørt palestinske eller arabiske ledere stått frem på den måten der. Det helt sprøtt. Det helt uvanlig. Og dette landet her, der tror vi at Gud holder sin hånd over det. Så det helt fantastisk. Vi skal ha direkte inn nå. Så jeg lurer på, Erik, har du kontakt? Fungerer linken? Da bare ønsker vi Eytan Halon velkommen.
Ja, jeg skal bare, da har vi Eytan. We've got you on the wall. I'll just make a short introduction. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Perfect. I'll make a short introduction, partly in Norwegian, then in English, then the floor is yours. Israel veldig viktig for konservativt, og Israel Norge først. Israel førstelinjeforsvaret mot radikal islam. Og Israel eksempler på at mangfold mulig når man ivaretar egen kultur og identitet. Og det egentlig oppsummeringen av denne dagen. Noen av dere har lest at det har vært litt turbulens i konservativt denne vinteren. En av kjernespørsmålene i den turbulensen var spørsmål om Israel. Og derfor det veldig viktig for oss å slå dette fast. Hvis du kommer inn i dette partiet, uansett hvor mye du taler i tunger, og vil fjerne støtten til Israel i dette partiets program, så ryker du ut av partiet. Eytan, we would very much have loved to have you here today, but the situation is as it is. We are honored to have you as a representative of the State of Israel. And this political party will be the number one challenge to the anti-Semitic rhetoric from the left in this country and the pro-Islamist stand of our government. And you have an audience here that warmly welcomes you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Eric. It's a shame that I can't be with you physically, but at least I'm here with you digitally. And firstly, I must say thank you very much for the support, for the bridges that you are building between Norway and Israel in these difficult times. It's been some difficult years for Israel, not just in Norway, but all around the world. And whilst our citizens and my fellow Israelis have been sitting in bomb shelters for the last 2.5 years or so, facing rockets and missiles from many different countries and terrorist organizations, it is very easy to sit far away in Northern Europe and criticize the one democracy in the Middle East for defending itself. And it's important that we have voices here in Norway that provide a real moral clarity and refuse to accept a one-sided and single narrative that is very misleading and which is detached from the reality on the ground in Israel. I'll mention a few things which I think are important at this really critical time in the Middle East. It's a conflict that affects all of us at the moment. We see it in energy prices, in our economies all over the world. And it's important to say that what we're seeing now in the actions of Iran, in the Straits of Hormuz, and their attacks on their neighbors, is not just something that we've been warning about for many, many years. Is not only the result of the failure of diplomacy for many years, but it's also it is a symptom. It's a symptom of what has been allowed to grow and strengthen itself and become in Tehran and Iran and in the Middle East and Iran's proxies. Today, what we're seeing is the symptom. And of course, if you let such a regime strengthen itself for almost 50 years and spread terror across the Middle East, then we shouldn't be surprised when that terror has an impact on the whole of the world. So, for the last 2.5 years, since October the 7th, 2023, Israel has been defending itself on many different fronts. And I'll speak briefly about the different fronts that we have, and some of them are closer to Norway and some of them are further away from Norway. Of course, Israel has been fighting militarily on multiple fronts. It started on October the 7th in Gaza, or when Hamas and other Palestinian terror groups invaded Israel, massacred 1,200 people, took another 250 hostage, and launched a terrible war that saw too many killed. On October the 7th, Hamas turned our cities, towns, and music festivals into the battlefield with the full knowledge that we would go and defend ourselves, and their strategy is to turn their own towns and their own cities into a battlefield. In Lebanon, we've been fighting Hezbollah for many, many years. An Iranian proxy that has taken over the south of Lebanon, but has taken a major hit in recent years. And today we find ourselves in negotiations with the Lebanese government because we understand that we need to get this Iranian proxy out of the south of Lebanon, both for the people of Israel and for the people of Lebanon. And you can really go around every front and the major changes that have taken place there since October the 7th. Syria, the Assad regime is no more. There is a new government, a new leadership in place, and we must remain skeptical about their intentions and make sure that they protect the minorities inside Syria. That means the Christians, that means the Druze, that means the Alawites, and more. And of course, today we find ourselves in a protracted conflict with Iran. And our goals are very simple. Our goals are to remove the existential threat that Iran has posed and continues to pose and will continue to pose as long as the current regime is in power. The Iranian regime is committed to the destruction of the state of Israel, and we cannot allow the most dangerous regime in the world, which is the Iranian regime, to have the world's most dangerous weapon. We saw what happened when diplomacy failed when it came to North Korea. We cannot afford to let Iran have a nuclear weapon. And if we think what Iran is doing today is problematic for the world and dangerous for the world and hard to tackle, and we can only imagine what that would be like if that same regime would threaten its neighboring countries, and of course the state of Israel, and the whole of Europe for that matter, with a nuclear weapon, and not just its ballistic missiles and drones. And that war, the Israel-Iran war, has been, it may be convenient to ignore it, but it's a war that is very, very close to Norway. It's the same drones that Iran is firing at the United Arab Emirates, at Israel, at Bahrain, Saudi Arabia. These are the same drones that Russia is firing at Ukraine. And of course, Norway has a long border with Russia as well. So that war is not a faraway war in the Middle East. It is a war that is not only on Europe's doorstep, it is inside Europe as we speak. So it's not just our war, but rather it's a war that the whole of Europe is already fighting. And there are multiple other fronts, and there's the Houthis in Yemen, there is the rising terror in Judea and Samaria, or the West Bank, militias, Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria. The list goes on and on. And there is context and there are truths that are simply not heard. If I look at the mainstream Norwegian media, these are the reality of what is going on in the Middle East is simply not there. It's too simplified. If we're being kind, it's oversimplified, and if we're being honest, then there's a clear narrative. I was reading an article recently on NRK, which talked about Israel and America's war on Iran, and that the Iranians had fired several ballistic missiles at apparent civilian targets in the Middle East, it's not true. It's not based in fact. The Iranians fired 650 ballistic missiles at Israel alone and fired thousands of missiles and drones across the Gulf in the Middle East and at Cyprus and an American base along the way away. It's not fact, it's narrative building, and that is incredibly problematic. And I read the Norwegian media, and I see just how misleading it can be. So that leads me on to my next point, which is the fronts in the Middle East that Israel is fighting militarily are only some of the fronts. And rather, we have at least two additional fronts. And this is where you and the party and the supporters of Israel have a great role to play. One, as I mentioned, is really the media front. It is as much a front when it comes to the legitimacy of Israel's ability to defend itself as any other front. There is a war on information. There is a war on the narrative. And Israel, we're a small country. We're 10 million people. And we are fighting an information war and a media war against a much, much larger enemy that goes far beyond Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. You only have to look at the power of outlets such as Al Jazeera and the various other channels to see the influence that Hamas propaganda and propaganda from other terrorist organizations in the Arab world have over the entire world. And here we must be clear, and when we see things in the media that are misleading, we must stand up and counter it and make sure that what is being reported every night on the news, every morning in the newspapers, 24/7 on digital media, is the truth, is the facts, and we cannot allow an anti-Israel biased narrative to take over. And I'm not sure that's a war that we've been winning to date, but it's a war that we're not giving up on. And as someone who comes from a background in media, that is a key part of my job, is to make sure that the truth is told and people can make up their own opinions and with all the facts at hand. So that is one additional front. And then the other front that we see very much in these days, and we see it all over the Western world, is the front, which is the global battle against Jewish communities everywhere. Everywhere where there is a Jewish community, there is a war against those Jewish communities. There is a rise in anti-Semitism. Whenever there is an escalation in violence in the Middle East, there is an immediate correlation, an immediate escalation in anti-Semitism and attacks on Jewish communities around the world. And Norway is not immune to that. There is a small Jewish community here, but it's not about the numbers. It has never been about the numbers. The Jewish community here is, because of its numbers, it is additionally vulnerable, and they rely on friends and supporters from outside the Jewish community to stand up and say, we need to take the necessary action to protect our Jewish communities. And if we look just in recent days at problematic events that have been happening in Norway, well, I can list three just from really the last few days and weeks. One, of course, were the horrific comments made by a professor at NTNU in Trondheim, calling October the 7th the most beautiful event of the century. Nothing less than glorification of the worst type of terror. And if I was a Jewish student not just a Jewish student, if I'm a student at all, or a faculty member, or even just someone who lives in Trondheim, be very worried that there are people walking around Trondheim in a position of influence, educating the next generation, who believe that the 7th of October is the most beautiful event of the current century. That should trouble everybody. I don't think we haven't heard enough condemnation of that. Just a few days ago in Oslo, as there are in many cities in Norway, unfortunately, there are these stumbling stones on the pavements, or in memory of the Norwegian Jews who were deported to their deaths during the Holocaust and deported to Auschwitz. And here in Oslo, there was, some of you may have seen it, a picture of Hamas have this red inverted triangle that they use on videos where they attack Israeli targets. Someone went out and painted one of these red triangles on top of these memory stones, stumbling stones in the center of Oslo. And that's, you think somebody goes out, decides they're going to take paint and abuse the memory, not only of the, it's not just an attack on living Jews, but abusing the memory of those who were murdered 80 years ago by the Nazis at Auschwitz. And at the same time, we also have events just in the last week or two at the Holocaust Center in Oslo with a lecturer from the University of Oslo comparing the trauma of the Holocaust with the trauma of the so-called Nakba in essentially the establishment of Israel and the Arab army's failure to destroy the state of Israel in 1948. So this is where we are. It's an incredibly troubling narrative. I don't think we see enough politicians standing up and vocally condemning this sort of rhetoric. And when these things aren't condemned, it allows them to fester and develop and become more prominent. And that's a very worrying place to be. And perhaps I'll finish with some words about Israel and Norway. As you know, as friends of Israel, these have been challenging times in the Norway-Israel relationship. And not starting on October the 7th, of course, but there has been a rapid deterioration in the relationship since October the 7th. Only a few months later, a recognition of a Palestinian state by Norway, Spain, and Ireland, withdrawal of investments from the Norwegian pension fund from Israeli companies, purely because they are involved in Israel's ability to defend itself, actions in the International Court of Justice, in the General Assembly, and the list goes on, and one-sided rhetoric from the current government, which is certainly noticed and read in Jerusalem. Now, Israel is interested in a good relationship with every country, including Norway, and we're quite happy to have difficult conversations where necessary, and we have difficult conversations with many of our allies and partners. But there is so much potential in the Norway-Israel relationship. If we can bring it back to a place of balance and looking at reality and recognizing reality in the Middle East. You look at values, Norway and Israel share so many values, both democratic states, both recognize individual freedoms. The list goes on and on. You know, there was a presentation given a few years ago by a former Israeli ambassador. It's an event where he showed key Norwegian values, key Israeli values, and key Palestinian values. And why is it that Norway finds it easier to team up or connect to the Palestinians and develop relationships with the Palestinians than it does with Israel, that shares all of Norway's values. And there is so much we can do together if we bring some sense back into the Norway-Israel relationship. We can do so much together politically. We can do so much in terms of defense. You know, if Norway wants the best defensive technologies out there, then they know where to come and they know where to look. And unfortunately, we have a lot of experience when it comes to defending ourselves. And in today's Europe, every country needs to be looking at how to best defend its people. And Israel has a lot to offer. We have a lot to do in business. We have a lot to do in culture, in people-to-people relationships. There is so much we can do, but at the moment it's not being done because anti-Israel hostility and politics meets that potential far too often and far too early. And so we have to be brave and make sure that those who do support Israel in Norway stand up and build those bridges where it's difficult in the parliament today, and it's difficult because of the politics and the headache that the anti-Israel organizations give to anybody who wants to cooperate with Israel here in Norway. There are businesses and universities that say, it's best that we don't do it just because we don't want the headache. And that's a really problematic place to be. And perhaps one example on that front, if you are a student of Middle Eastern history or Middle Eastern international relations at the University of Oslo, then there is no problem for the University of Oslo to invite the head of the Palestinian representation office here in Oslo, but they will not invite the head of the Israeli embassy in Oslo because they're too scared, and probably because it's too dangerous for me today to go and visit the University of Oslo campus. So that is not a good place to be, and actually it's failing the students and the next generation. So there is a lot of work to do, and that is why I'm here, and that is what I'll be doing in the remaining 2 years or so that I have in Norway. And I really do request and want, and we need your assistance, those who understand the reality on the ground and are not afraid to stand up and say what is morally right, is to do business with Israel, to identify where the media is getting things wrong intentionally or unintentionally. Often it's intentionally, and make sure that we strengthen the Norway-Israel relationship for the benefit of both countries. And we have so much to earn from it, so much, both Norway and Israel. And every day that we don't do it, we are losing out. It's never too late to get that back on track. So I look forward to doing it together with you, and I very much appreciate this invitation. And keep up the good work, and we really thank you for your support.